Okay, good morning, everyone. My name is Michael Dalrymple from SD Consultancy, and we're about to go through a registration process for modern apprenticeships in order to register through the Scottish Qualifications Authority and Skills Development Scotland platforms in order to allow the delivery of your leadership program with Enquest. Before we start the conversation, I need to make sure that everyone on the call is aware that I'm recording the conversation and is comfortable with that. So could I just have a little thumbs up from each one of you, or a little indication that you're comfortable? Please. Thank you, Nick.
Yeah, that's fine.
That's one from Graham.
Yeah, that's right.
Thank you, Danny. Ewan and Gavin.
Yeah, I'm all fine.
Ewan, I can see, and Gavin's got some thumbs up. Thank you, everyone. That's great. So what I'm planning to do is to share my screen and take you through the 6 or 7 forms that we need to do. You should have received pre-populated forms from Ty Sterry with the information that you've kindly already provided us with through the website. So I've got what I'm planning to do is to put up the blank forms and just make sure and talk you through them. And I just encourage you all to check for errors, particularly with important dates like your birthday and your national insurance numbers. These are the sort of, and the spelling of your name and your surname as well. These are really important for registration in order to record your details appropriately. Some of the forms are skills development standard forms, some of them are SQA forms, and some of them are SD consultancy forms. So the first form that I have up on my screen is Form 2, SDC 1A Candidate Induction Checklist. All of you should have that, hopefully. Is there anybody who doesn't? If you could just open up your version of it and make sure that your name and address is correct. The manager and telephone details should be Fiona's details under manager. And then your name should come further down and my name should be near the bottom of the page. The date for signature, if you could make sure that you amend that date to today's date, please, the 16th of November. And then we'll move over to the second page. The second page is really just a little bit about health and safety and procedure that I need to talk you through. Make sure you understand that when I'm pretty sure with Enquest you'll be pretty hot on health and safety anyway, but in order to satisfy the requirements of the program, I just need to talk through and make sure that all of you, when you started at Enquest, were given a company induction and a handbook, and you're familiar with the health and safety policy documents and policy statements, matters relating to equal opportunities, training and development for sure, because you're on the course with us. Confidentiality and the employer's liability insurance form are things that we will discuss with Fiona. So when you started with Enquest, you would have had an induction. I need to make sure you're all comfortable, that you know how to report an accident, should there be an accident on site, and how to record it, how to learn from it, what the issues in relation to communication at Enquest are with you and your colleagues. Learner support. Learner support is available to you through our online e-portfolio, which I'll tell you a little bit about as the meeting goes on. We'll talk also through in your course. You'll talk about review meetings with your managers and your colleagues, and how to give and receive feedback. The other thing to talk about is making sure you're aware of first aid and how to evacuate your places of work should you need to. Those are all fairly standard things that I'm sure all of you are familiar with. So if we get into a little bit more detail in terms of the actual apprenticeship that you'll be undertaking, I'll talk to you a little bit about the roles and responsibilities. So throughout the process, you guys will be referred to as apprentices or candidates. And the person who works most closely with you from an assessment perspective is called your assessor. So that would be Ty Sterry, and possibly myself on occasion in support of Ty. Ty will be working with you to make sure you gather the requisite knowledge, and we gather evidence of your performance for all of the units that have been selected as part of your leadership course. So Ty is known as your assessor, and he should be in touch with you most frequently. The person who checks up on Ty's work is called an internal verifier, and the internal verifier is internal because it's within our partnership, and he's verifying the work that Ty will be doing. So it's making sure that the right evidence is being gathered and linked to the appropriate criteria as we move through the units together. We're also subject to an annual check by SQA, and that person who does that is called the external verifier. The external verifier comes into the process in order to check that the internal verification process is being properly followed. So they'll be looking for records of engagement between the assessor and the internal verifier. And also, the other thing to tell you about is because we are working with Skills Development Scotland and claiming funds from Skills Development Scotland, we are subject to audit by Skills Development Scotland on an annual basis. Therefore, the paperwork that we undertake together is open for them to audit on an annual basis. So you'll definitely be hearing a lot from Ty and possibly from the internal verifier. You may also hear from the external verifier and the auditor during the process. Probably the external verifier and the auditor maybe once during your course. Those are the roles and responsibilities. Reference material and learning material will be shared with you through the online e-portfolio, which you'll all get a script for, a login script, a password, and a username. And that will be yours to gather evidence and to review your progress and keep you up to date. So equipment, in terms of equipment, there's not an awful lot of equipment we will need in terms of the leadership course. Materials will be limited to learning materials. And so that's everything I was hoping to talk through on the second page. We'll move over to the third page. And I just wanted to point out to you that we will be doing using Adobe software to do digital signatures on these forms. So what will happen is you'll get a series of emails, and the email will come into your inbox. And when you click on the link in the email, which says review and sign this document, the document opens up. And you'll be able to see the document just like it is here, and you'll be able to see within the document where you need to sign. And if you click into the document to sign, a window pops up, which you can then use to sign if you open the document on a smartphone or an iPad or something. I've actually even traced my signature with a mouse in the past. So that's the way we'll do that. You click on the link in the email, the document opens up, you click into the document, and you'll be able to sign on a window that pops up with a little blue line across it, and you'll be able to select across the top. There's an option for drawing your signature. If you select draw, you'll be able to trace your signature along a blue line. You put your name into a box and you click accept. And this form, for instance, that I've got up at the moment actually needs you to sign in more than one place, and it's being signed by more than one person. So the way that procedure works is that once you've clicked on the first place for you to sign, you'll click on the next, and it'll jump and insert your signature to the second place and the third place, and so on, until all your signatures are in the right place. And then there'll be an option at the end of the document to accept and sign all. Once you've done that, it goes through that and a window pops up to say you're all set. When you see the window that says you're all set, that means your bit of the signature in terms of the document is done. And what will then happen is the system will automatically send an email to the next person along the chain, which in your case would be Fiona in London. She will do the same thing. And then for this form, it'll come to me and I will do it as well. Once we've all done all our signatures and they're all in the right place and we've all received the you're all set message, a final version of that document is sent to each of the parties of the signature. Please take a bit of care when you're doing your signatures, because of the audit process, we've actually been audited in the past where we've had signatures challenged if they don't look exactly the same as the one that's on the original documentation. Very often there's a clawback situation. We end up struggling with losing Skills Development Scotland clawing money back from us. So please take care to trace your signature today the way you'll be able to trace your signature throughout the rest of your course, please. And you'll be doing that another 6 or 7 times during the course. As you pass a number of milestones, we'll be signing them off together. Okay. The last thing to tell you about is a modern apprenticeship and how it fits together. That relates to this form. So a modern apprenticeship comprises of 3 parts. For the the one that you will be undertaking, it comprises of SVQ units, which are selected really to do with leadership, mentoring, building teams, etc., managing people's performance. That's the first part of the modern apprenticeship. The second part is called your core skills. Because of the information that we've received from you, we'll be able to look up your academic record to see to what level your core skills were achieved at school. For those who went to school in Scotland, there should be an academic record to find. And what we generally find when we look up the core skills, there's 5 of them, is that there's no consistency between people and schools as to how far they got with all of them or any of them in particular. So we need to get them up to levels 5 and 6 in order to complete the course, which probably means that for most of you, in addition to your SVQ units, we'll be adding 1 or 2 units, or maybe 3, in some cases, probably all of them if you went to school in England, for instance, at the appropriate level. So the core skills are numeracy, communication, ICT, working with others, and problem solving. Each of those has got a number of criteria that need to be satisfied, which we'll be gathering evidence for as we go along. Once we have all of those and the SVQ units, the third part of an apprenticeship is called the industry enhancements. And in the case of the modern apprenticeship in management with a focus on leadership, which is what you're doing, that enhancement is actually one of the core skills at a higher level than is required for this course. So normally we select the communication or the working with others core skill as at the higher level, which is level 6. So that is how that form will be populated. When you return your forms to me after this call, I will be looking up your skills and matching what you need to match with what the course requirements are. So that's us through talking about the first form, which is probably one of the longer forms to complete. We'll move on now to look at the second form, which doesn't require your signature, but this is a form that relates to your health and well-being. And what we like to do is we like to have you just complete this form just to give us a little bit of an insight. It is a personal thing. It's a little bit of an insight into how well you are and how your mental health is at the outset of the course. And it just allows us to be a little bit sensitive if we need to in terms of developing a learning plan with you. So what I'd ask you to do is to choose 2 or 3 emojis that best describe how you are at the outset of the course and how you are sort of 15 or 20 minutes into my chat with you as to whether things are becoming clearer. So choose 2 or 3 of those emojis that match how you feel and let me know. The other thing to tell you is that our website has got an enormous amount of information in terms of useful advice for your well-being. There's no pressure on you. It's completely anonymous. If you'd like to get in touch with us or with our mental health first aider, his name is Douglas, and you can get in touch with him using the email address wellbeing@sdconsultancy.org.uk. As I say, sdconsultancy.org.uk/wellbeing, there's quite a lot of useful information there for you to refer to, contact details and things like that. Right, so once you've selected your 2 or 3 emojis and you've considered whether you need to get in touch in terms of well-being, the last 2 things for you to fill in would be information about what you do at work when you are worried or concerned about things at work. How do you cope with them? What do you do? So just put down a couple of thoughts. There's no right or wrong answers to these, by the way. This is just for us to get a bit of an insight into your own thinking. Also list a couple of hobbies and activities that you like to do in your spare time, just for interest's sake. And then things that you don't like doing, things that make you uncomfortable, would be useful to know about as well. So this form just goes on your record, and it's your assessor that looks at it just to make sure that he's empathetic in terms of your well-being at the outset of your course as we get to know each other. So if you wouldn't mind returning that form to me at the same time, that would be quite useful.
Oh, sorry.
Okay, we're going to go on to form number 3 now. Form number 3 is an SQA disclaimer, because some of the units we're doing, including the SVQ units and the core skills, are SQA approved units. this declaration is required to make sure that the evidence that we use and upload, that you upload and that Ty uploads with respect to you, relate to your work only and nobody else's work. So you're making a declaration at the beginning to suggest that there will be no plagiarism and no malpractice in terms of representing yourself. So this is your declaration to say that the work is your own work. It's a one-page form and it only needs to be signed by you. So please just check your name is correctly spelled and make sure that the date is changed to today's date. So that would be the 16th of November. And then return that form to me, please. Okay, we'll go on to the next form. We'll skip form number 4 for now, and we'll go on to form number 6. And the reason will become apparent in a minute. Form number 6, I'm going to open up. This is an equality and diversity form. And this form requires us to report. We don't keep this information, but it requires us to report on the sectors of the population that you personally fit into so that they can track the amount of expenditure within the different parts of the population. The only page of this report that we retain is the signature page. If I display 2 pages at a time, you'll be able to see the first section relates to your ethnic group. So it would be very useful if you could choose the ethnic group that best describes you and how you fit in there. Tick one of those boxes. We'll then move on to the next page. Your gender, again, please choose a gender that best describes you and whether you have ever identified as a trans or transgender person. We'd also require you to tick a box in relation to your religion and your sexual orientation. And then this page 4, if you've grown up in care, then we need you to tick the box that says yes. And if you have any learning difficulties or health conditions or impairments, we require you to select yes. Now, the reason you're doing this is for us to develop an appropriate learning plan that matches your requirements. So learning difficulties include anxiety, depression, ADHD, dyslexia, dyspraxia, autism, Asperger's, Down syndrome. Any of those boxes require ticked. What that means is we need to just take a little bit of additional care at the outset that we are planning appropriately in order to accommodate your specific needs. As I say, we don't keep this information. We use it to develop that plan, and that's it. So the only page that we will keep from this is the final page, where again, I'd ask you please to check your spelling of your name and the date, change the date to the 16th of November. And that will be form 6 finished. Now, the reason we did form 6 and not onto form 4 is because should any of you have ticked any of the learning difficulty or care boxes, we need to develop a specific learning plan, which is known as Appendix 4. And I think we'll just deal with that if we need to, as it comes up, as I look at your forms as they come in, I'll deal with that. So I'm not going to talk that through in general for you, and we'll just move straight on to Appendix 5. Appendix 5 is the skills development training agreement, which I'm just bringing up now. And this would have quite a lot of information on it. So the first page relates specifically to you, and the information we've put on there hopefully matches what you've sent in terms of your eligibility form. So we have your first name, any middle names, your last name. Please double check your date of birth. Quite often we make that error with the date of birth if we're copying across and filling in. So please make sure that's correct. Your national insurance number is correct. I'm thinking Ty has looked up your Scottish candidate number. If he hasn't, then please leave it blank and I will insert that. Your email address, your mobile number. The preferred method of contact is normally checked as SMS. So what would happen, the first SMS you would get from Skills Development Scotland will be a message shortly after we register you to ask you to confirm that you have registered for a modern apprenticeship in management with SD Consultancy. And you'll be able to respond to that text message with simply the letter Y. It's an automated bot service that's looking for the answer. It's not a person that's sending you a text message. So anything other than the letter Y that comes back on the text is then rejected, and we have to start the process again. So please take some care when that text message comes in that you respond with the letter Y. Double check your postcode, your address, and your town and city. And then we'll move on to page 2. So page 2, I would think most of you would be selecting the option at the top there, length of unemployment as not applicable. Sometimes when people start a modern apprenticeship, they've been unemployed and they're starting an apprenticeship in a job on day one that they start. It's probably not applicable to most of you. But if there was a period of unemployment before you started, then you would select how long you were unemployed for. Current role length, if you've been in your current role, not your employment, your current role, you can select a box there and tell us how long you've been doing what you're doing currently, which may or may not be different to your employment length. And you can see that they're really only interested in going up to 13 months. Once it's more than 13 months, it's simply the more than 13 months box is checked. The next thing to make sure is checked appropriately is the employment status, whether you're full-time or part-time. If you are on a part-time basis, in order to qualify for funding as an apprentice, you need to be working at least 16 hours a week. So that's what we would double check for anybody who selects part-time. Please then also let us know what you were doing before you started this current job, if you're working for a different employer, or whether you've come out of college or school or university, or if you're at home, or any of those other options. In terms of the SOC 2020 code and your job title, we will have those from your forms. The SOC 2020 code is something that I look up on a spreadsheet, so don't worry too much about that. And your highest SCQF level held is also looked up by me from your academic record. Please also then take some time to check the inquest details for Fiona are correctly inserted under employer details, and that the priority sector is checked as yes, and the category would be engineering and energy. That'll take us onto the third page of this form, where we would like you to insert a start date of today, the 16th of November, and then provisionally we would just allocate a 12-month period for completion. We'd expect to complete faster than that, but what we do is we put a target expected end date of a year from today. So that would be the 16th of November, 2022. Selecting Highlands and Islands as the area of Scotland, please. And the qualification reference and title should be in. The Skills Sector Council should say Instructus, and the MA framework should say Management. The occupational group should also say Management, and the VQ level should say SCQF 7. The training category that you fall into, I think a lot of you are 25 plus. There would only be a change to the training category should you have selected on that Appendix 6 form whether there was a learning difficulty for us to accommodate. So if there was a learning difficulty, then we would change the training category from 25 plus down to a younger version if appropriate. Will the participant attend off-the-job training as part of the requirement? The answer is no. Most of your learning will be done on the job with real work examples. Therefore, there's no additional training venue address to worry about. Under section E, provider custom data, that will be completed by us. So we then go over to page 4 of the form, where you will sign. Your name should appear there once you've, it sort of auto-populates once you put your name in on the first page. And please make sure the date of signing, again, is the 16th of November. We'll move on to the next page, which is for Fiona to sign. Fiona's details should be there on page 5 of 6, and my details will be there on page 6 of 6. And we'll make sure that those dates are correct before we send them out. And that's us talked through form 5. So there's only one form left to talk through, which is form 7. I'm going to call up form 7 now. This is what's called a skills sector training agreement or training plan. It is a 2-page document, and it really just spells out our responsibilities to each other, because there's a 3-way party within this. there's yourself as the candidate, there's your employer, and then there is SD Consultancy as a training provider. So I'm just going to set up the 2 pages and make sure that we can see them. And just to talk through your responsibilities as the apprentice is to work for the employer in accordance with the agreed terms of your own employment, to undertake your training and courses, to keep your records, and to work through the assessments with us, to carry out the work as required in order to achieve the outcomes of the framework. Be diligent, punctual, and behave in a responsible manner, and to promote at all times the employer's best interests. The employer's responsibilities are to employ you subject to their usual terms and conditions of employment, to provide you with facilities, training, and workplace opportunities necessary to achieve the framework that we've selected together, which is the leadership aspects of management, to pay you an agreed salary, and in the event of you being unable to retain, in the event of the employer being unable to retain, to support them in looking for employment elsewhere. In the event of the apprenticeship being terminated prematurely for any other reason other than unsatisfactory performance or misconduct, then they will use reasonable endeavors to secure employment elsewhere, operate a formal health and safety policy, and to operate an equal opportunities policy. Us as the training center agree that the content of your personal training plan matches the selected framework, and that we will contract with the employer to provide the training and assessment necessary to enable the modern apprenticeship to achieve the framework, and to use our best endeavors to ensure that the employer provides the apprentice with the facilities and training workplace opportunities. So that's how this sort of sets out how we will cooperate together in order for you to achieve your leadership qualifications. And you will sign at the bottom of the page, again with today's date, please, the 16th of November. Information on the following page is really just relating to your name and address, which we have already inserted. Again, please just have a run through that, double check we've got the correct full name, correct home address. Work address should be the Salamvo terminal in Shetland, and the date of birth. Your date of birth needs to be correct. Again, under the employer, it's Fiona that should be appearing in the field. And that's us talked through all of the forms that will be needed. So the last thing to do is to talk through the process. I've told you a little bit of how the digital signature process will work. And what will happen is once you've signed your bit, as we discussed, it will go to Fiona, she'll sign her bit, it'll come to me, it'll sign our bit. And then a final signed version of the document goes through to all 3 parties. Some of the forms are only signed by you, so they just come straight back to me once you've signed them. And I collate all these forms together and I use them to make an application to Skills Development Scotland for the funded opportunity. Once that application is approved, that's when the text message is sent to you in order for you to confirm your assignment. So once you've confirmed your assignment, funding is made available, and we can then go ahead and register you on the other platforms and create the e-portfolio account for yourselves, which would allow you to then log in and begin evidence gathering of your competency. So I have briefly got a little bit of time left in our chat for sort of 5 or 10 minutes that I plan to use. Firstly, I think just to make sure that everybody's comfortable with what I've explained, and just invite anyone to ask any questions. If there are no questions, then what I'd like to do next is to just briefly show you how the e-portfolio looks and how it works. And we can move on to that. So I'm going to just call up an example, and then I'll share my screen again. Okay. So this is my screen has now got a series of candidates that are currently doing a management qualification with us, and I will just open up one of these candidates here that's complete. So this candidate is a fellow called Matthew, who worked at the University of St Andrews, and he undertook a management qualification to SCQF level 7 with probably quite similar units to the ones that you guys will be doing, including building teams, coaching and mentoring individuals. So when you log in eventually and you go through all of your checklists, you will probably land on a page that looks like this. And as you can see on this page, there is the course for management at SCQF level 7, but also you can see Matthew needed to do 3 core skills to get up to level 5. He needed to do working with others, numeracy, and problem solving. So all of the evidence that we've gathered and linked through the criteria has allowed us to complete Matthew's course completely, and link all of the criteria that are in the different units. So if we were going into Matthew's management qualification, you can see the 7 units that we chose there. Some of them are mandatory and some of them are optional. The ones that have been selected for you relate to the leadership aspects of your job. Develop your knowledge, skills and competence, lead your team, manage people's performance at work. There's a mandatory unit on health and safety, developing, sustaining productive working relationships with your colleagues, coaching and mentoring individuals. And you can see for each of these qualifications, there's a number of bits of evidence that have been collected. So you can see 4 bits of evidence that relate to develop your knowledge, 9 that relate to lead your team, 8 that relate to manage people's performance, 10 that relate to health and safety, 5 for developing and sustaining productive working relationships, 8 that relate to coaching, and 2 that relate to mentoring. Now, it is quite possible that some of these bits of evidence overlap and relate to more than one unit at a time. And that's something that Ty will work with you on in order to gather evidence. Different types of evidence that can be gathered could include a conversation, a professional discussion where you are telling somebody what you know. It could be work product that you could produce at work that you could upload as an example of your skill or your performance. So there may be minutes of a meeting where you've led the meeting. There may be communication with your colleagues. There may be things like instructions that have been carried out or things like that. There may be little video clips, there may be photos of things that you've done, there may be audio clips that you can use to upload your evidence of your knowledge. What we've used quite successfully in the past with lots of candidates is WhatsApp, and people can send little voice clips through WhatsApp. You can upload them yourself onto your portfolio. So as I say, each one of you will be getting your own account. You'll get a login and a script and a password. And when you log in for the first time, you'll be encouraged to change your password to something that you can remember. So that's how this system works. I'll just drop you into one of these areas and we can show you a little bit of the types of evidence that Matthew has. That's not going to work because we finished with that. So if we go into this button, yeah, so for leadership, Matthew's leadership, these are the types of evidence that we have from Matthew. We have some project evidence where he's requesting support. We have a witness testimony, which is somebody actually writing to us, telling us and reporting about Matthew's performance. We've had some details of professional discussions, and we have some evidence of his own goals that he's set himself. So those are the sort of types of evidence that are very useful for us in order to link criteria. The other useful bits of evidence would be worksheets and questionnaires and things like that that you will be carrying out with Ty. So I think that's how Ty will probably kick you off. Each of the units that we get into has got 2 different sets of criteria within the unit. The first relate to your performance and what you do. We need to gather evidence of your performance. And the second set relates to your knowledge and what you know. So we need to gather evidence of what you know. Hence the use of worksheets and things, little photos and videos and things like that will allow us to gather the evidence like that matches. Okay, I've got through everything I wanted to show you in terms of the e-portfolio, so I'm going to stop my sharing there. And again, we've got to a point where I can invite any of you to ask any questions you'd like to. Anybody have anything that they want to ask me? Okay, if there's nothing anybody wants to ask, then the last thing for me to do is to just take a quick screenshot of the page before you disappear, so that I can just have a record of who's been in the meeting. Which I've now done. That's it. So if nobody has anything further, that's as far as we're going to go now. Just to remind you, the next steps, please, are for you to make sure that your forms are properly filled out and then send them to me. You can see my email address above me there, michael@sdconsultancy.org, but don't forget to put the .uk on the end. It seems to have been chopped off on that background of mine. And I think I'm in the copy line to some of the emails that Ty has sent you anyway. So please do send those forms to me as soon as they're ready. We'd very much like to have them in by Friday in order to make the application so that we can get going for next week. So Friday is your deadline to aim at in terms of returning those forms to me, please. If there's nothing else from anybody else, that's us through as far as I was hoping to get to today. And we look forward to getting your documents as soon as you're done. So thank you very much for your time this morning. I'll just
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Look forward to receiving your emails.
Thanks.